Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're tackling this really surprising and pretty hotly debated idea. Can speaking more than one language actually, protect your brain as you get older?
Okay, so let's just jump right in with the most incredible claim at the heart of all this research. And believe me, it's a big one. It's pretty much the reason this whole topic is so fascinating.
Yeah, you heard that right. We're talking about multiple major studies finding that people who've used two languages their whole lives, well, they can push back the start of dementia symptoms by an average of 4 to 5 years. That's compared to people who only speak one language. I mean, wow.
So what in the world is going on here? How could just speaking another language have such a powerful protective effect? To really get it, we need to look at just how big of a deal this promise really is. And look, this is not some small, minor thing. We're talking about a delay that, and this is coming straight from the researchers, surpasses what any current drug or medical treatment can do to hold off Alzheimer's symptoms. That is huge. Okay, so the answer seems to lie in this really cool concept called cognitive reserve. Honestly, it's the key to unlocking this whole thing. Think of it like this. When you do mentally challenging stuff, you're building a stronger, more flexible brain. It's more resilient. So when damage from aging or a disease starts to creep in, a brain with a high cognitive reserve can basically find detours around the problem, It keeps things running smoothly for a lot longer.
And it just so happens that being bilingual is like one of the most intense lifelong workouts your brain can possibly get. It's not something you do once and you're done. It's this constant background hum of mental effort.
Right. So this constant juggling act is what's happening inside a bilingual's brain all the time. Even when you're just speaking one language, all the languages you know are switched on. Your brain is always working to pick the right words and, at the same time, suppress the others. This whole process of building and strengthening connections, that's called neuroplasticity. And managing two languages all the time literally reshapes the brain, making it tougher. It's exactly like having a bunch of different ways to get home. If one road is blocked by traffic, no big deal. Your brain already knows a dozen other back roads. And here's the crazy part. We have physical proof of this. We can literally see the difference in the brain's structure. Brain scans show that bilinguals often have denser gray matter. That's the brain's information processing centers, especially in the areas that handle language and control.
All right, so let's dig into the actual data that builds this really powerful case for delaying dementia symptoms.
Okay. Check out these numbers from that huge 2010 study. They looked at over 200 patients who all had probable Alzheimer's. And get this, the bilingual patients started showing symptoms at an average age of 77.7. The monolinguals, 72.6. That is a 5.1-year difference. Just let that sink in. And here's the kicker. This wasn't because the bilinguals were, say, more educated or had fancier jobs. In fact, in this particular study, the monolingual group actually had more years of formal education. So that really suggests that being bilingual itself is the secret ingredient here. But, okay, here's where things get a little tricky. While the evidence for delaying dementia seems pretty solid, the science on some of the other so-called benefits of bilingualism, well, that's a lot more complicated, and honestly, pretty controversial. See, for years, the idea was that because bilinguals are always managing that interference between languages, they get better at what are called executive functions. We're talking about things like better focus, being a better problem solver, or being able to switch between tasks more easily in your day-to-day life.
However, when you really dig into all the research, the picture gets messy. As more and more studies have come out, a lot of them just aren't finding the same thing. So this idea of a consistent, across-the-board advantage, it's now being fiercely debated by scientists.
And one big review pointed out a kind of worrying pattern. The studies that do find this bilingual advantage often use really small groups of people. But when you look at studies with huge groups, which are usually more reliable, they're way less likely to find any significant difference at all. And it gets even weirder. Even when a study finds an advantage on one specific lab test, it often just vanishes when they use a different test that's supposed to measure the exact same skill. So what does that tell us? It suggests that whatever tiny advantage they might be seeing in a lab probably doesn't translate to a real general boost in brain power out in the real world. So, where does that leave us? What are we supposed to make of all this? Let's try to pull all these different threads together and see the big picture. All right, so here's the bottom line. On the one hand, the evidence that bilingualism builds long-term brain resilience against disease, that looks really strong. But on the other hand, the claim that it gives you a general boost in your day-to-day brain power, that is on much shakier ground.
And this kind of suggests that the real secret sauce isn't necessarily being bilingual specifically. It's about what being bilingual represents, a deep, lifelong mental challenge. That's the thing that really seems to matter for building up that all-important cognitive reserve.
And you know what? That is fantastic news. It means that while learning a language is an amazing brain workout, it's just one of many ways you can build that vital cognitive reserve. Things like playing a musical instrument, getting deep into strategic games like chess, or even volunteering in a way that makes you solve complex problems, all of that can help keep your mind sharp.
So ultimately, this research is really asking us to think beyond just the languages we speak. It's about how we choose to live a mentally active life. The key isn't finding one single magic bullet. It's about embracing activities that constantly push our brains out of their comfort zone. So the real question for you is, what challenge are you going to choose?